Sadashiva-samarambham Shankaracharya-madhyamam Asmadacharya-paryantam Vande Guru-paramparam. Om Param varishtham brahmishtham paramanandarupinam paramarthanandayatim sadgurum pranatosmyaham. So, we have come to the last of the Vivekachudamani classes. This is the summary today. Vivekachudamani is a Vedantic work written by Adi Shankaracharya. It is a fairly big work consisting of 580 verses. Of these, Swamiji had selected 108 verses for our study. The title of this work, the main work, is Vivekachudamani. The word Chudamani, as I said, meaning an ornament for the head. So we are using that word here for Viveka, Vivekaha, meaning discrimination. Why? Because discrimination is a very important qualification required for the spiritual seeker. So the entire spiritual sadhana basically consists of two stages. First stage is Karma Yoga, where the Viveka is slightly different. What is needed? Discrimination between Dharma and Adharma. So a Karma Yogi has to take to a lifestyle of Dharma, avoiding Adharma. Therefore, a Karma Yogi requires Vivekaha between Dharma and Adharma. Dharma, Dharma, Vivekaha. And once he's got the requisite qualifications, he has to go to Jnana Yoga, which also requires Viveka, discrimination between Atma and Anatma, the real I and the false I. Thus, Jnana Yoga involves Atma Anatma Vivekaha. Karma Yoga involves Dharma Adharma Vivekaha. That means the entire spiritual journey requires discrimination or discernment, right? So discretion, discrimination, discernment between Dharma and Adharma, later on Atma and Anatma. And therefore, Vivekaha being so important is compared to Chudamani, a crest jewel. Therefore, the text is called Vivekachudamani, the crest jewel of discrimination, which leads the seeker to liberation. A very comprehensive text. So the importance of Viveka is actually seen in the title itself. So we will go through the summary very briefly. So the text itself, as Swamiji had conducted, was divided into 5 subsections or topics, 5 portions. So the first part, from verse 1 to 24, is a preliminary portion, an introduction to the teaching. So you can call it Avatarika or introductory part, where Shankaracharya first glorifies the human birth. Primary reason for the glory of human birth is that it can be used for attaining the greatest goal of moksha. And Shankaracharya feels that the human birth is validated only if it is utilized for moksha. Otherwise, human birth is not validated at all, right? So it is not worth, because dharma, artha and kama, all of them have to finally lead to moksha. Otherwise, the human birth is not useful. It has not fructified, right? So, and once we keep moksha as the goal, liberation as the goal, what is the means for liberation will be the next question. So, moksha sadhanam, means of moksha as self-knowledge. Self-knowledge is the only means of moksha, and then he points out that Vedantic inquiry is the only means of self-knowledge, because Vedanta alone reveals the self. So self-knowledge is the only means of moksha. So he points out that Vedantic inquiry will give moksha only when it is done with the help of a guru. It will fructify only when it is assisted by a guru. So you cannot do self-inquiry on your own. You have to go to a guru. So this is the program that Shankaracharya is suggesting. After this, he talks about Guru Shishya Lakshanani. What are the qualifications required for Guru? What is the qualification for a Shishya? The Shishya has to have 4 qualifications, which we have studied in Tattva Bodha and Introduction to Vedanta also. The 4 Ds: discrimination, dispassion, discipline, and desire for moksha. Vivekaha, Vairagyam, Shamadhishatka Sampatti, and Mumukshutva. So if one does not have these, then one has to acquire these with the help of the sadhanas prescribed in the Veda itself in the form of Karma Yoga and Upasana Yoga. Karma Yoga includes Upasana Yoga also. By practicing Karma Yoga, you acquire the 4-fold qualifications and come to a Guru. And Guru must have 2 important qualifications. He must be Shrotriya Brahmanishta. Brahmanishta means one who abides in his real nature of Brahman all the time. So abiding in Brahman or abiding in Brahman knowledge, right? That is the important aspect which is stressed. The second qualification is Shrotriya. He himself must have studied these scriptures under a Guru, because only then he will know the appropriate method of communicating. Because as we go deeper and deeper, you realize that to teach the prakriyas, it requires special skill. Otherwise, unlocking this is very, very difficult. So the method of communication is very important, and a person who has himself or herself studied under a guru and has necessary pedagogical skills can only communicate this, right? So both of them are important. So if both are available, both Jnana Nishta and Shrotriya Guru, then best. But suppose you don't have this both in the same qualification, same person, it is very important to note that a Shrotriya Guru who has come in the parampara and who can teach well is more important, because a person who is a Jnana Nishta and is not able to communicate, such a Guru will not be able to teach you, right? And here it is a clear teaching journey. And once these are available, the Shishya must go to a Guru with Shraddha and Bhakti, reverence and faith, Shraddha in the Guru, and clearly ask for moksha. Unless it is asked, the Guru will not give. So, Guru Upasadanam is important. A formal approach is important. And the Guru must have reasons to accept the disciple. For various reasons, he may not. But in general, if the qualified student is coming with an earnest and sincere request, the Guru will accept the Shishya. Right? So, Guru accepts the Shishya and then starts the teaching. So, Shankaracharya actually presents these in very beautiful verses. Ma bhaishta vidvam savanastya payaha samsara sindhos taranestu payaha enaiva yata yatayosya param tameva margam tava nirdishami. He says, the Guru says, now I know your problem. I know what the solution is. And it has been coming down through Guru Parampara for ages. So I am here to teach you. So now the stage is set. The Guru and the Shishya have met. And then he has to start, right? So up to this portion is the introductory portion. Manushya Janma Prashamsa, Moksha Sadhanam, Guru Shishya Lakshanani, Guru Upasadanam, and Shishya Svikara. Right? So all these are covered from 1 to 24. Then from 25 to 60 is the second part, where the 7 questions of the student were asked and answered. The 7 questions were presented in the 25th verse in our order. Ko nama bandhaha katamesha agataha katam pratisthasya katam vimokshaha kosavanatma paramakka atma tayor viveka katameta duchyatam. So we saw the 7 questions, right? So the first question is Ko Nama Bandhaha. What is bondage or samsara? So the classic definition of bondage is very, very important, and every student must remember and register. It is basically mistaking the body, mind, sense complex as I. It is a mistake of the self misconception, which is called adhyasa. And Acharya writes a huge Bhashyam, Adhyasa Bhashyam in the beginning of Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, right? One of the toughest Bhashyams that Acharya writes. And it is about this misconception. And this misconception is what is Ahankara, which is called Jiva Bhava or the individuality in English. So this is bondage. Since the mistake is taking place in the intellect, right? Because it is misconception, and we are concluding that we are the body, etc. The bondage is an intellectual problem. And that is why the study becomes important. The intellectual study is required to address this intellectual problem. So we require intellectual knowledge to remove the intellectual problem of mistaking ourselves as body. So self-misconception is the bondage bandhaha. That was the first question. The second one was Katamesha Agadaha. How did the self-mistake arise? Katam Agataha. So the answer to this is self-ignorance. So any mistake is because of ignorance, and self-mistake is because of self-ignorance. Atma Ajnana, Anatma Ajnana. So self-ignorance is Anadi. This self-ignorance is Anadi. We saw that. It did not just come and will go away that easily, etc. It has been there Anadi Kala, right? Janma Janmantar. So because of self-ignorance, then the third question comes, Kadam asya pratishta? How come it persists so long? Because everything else in the creation comes up and goes with time, right? So everything perishes in time. Even the universe completely perishes, right? It comes and it goes. So it perpetuates. But how is the self-ignorance perpetuating itself all the time? So self-ignorance and the consequences of self-bondage or self-mistake is perpetuated, and it is answered through the imagery of a vriksha, a tree in which 10 comparisons are given. And I won't go into the details. I'll just show you the verse so that you can remember this. Bijam samskriti bhumijasya tu tamaha dehatma dhiran kuraha. We saw this beautiful shloka 43. And you see all these comparisons were made. So the self-ignorance and self-mistake is the intellectual samsara, which is original. And this intellectual samsara leads to emotional samsara, which is the secondary samsara, which is in the form of kama, krodha, raga, dvesha, everything, right? Even later on, ahankara, mamakara, etc. I have a desire to acquire more and more. I want to remove certain things so that I can feel secure. So sense of limitations leads to desire. And therefore, kama, krodha, raga, dvesha, emotional problems are caused by intellectual samsara. Okay? So, avidya, kama, karma, and all these karmas or actions, they produce results. It can be immediate, it can be later. They produce invisible punya papam, and therefore karma and phalam are produced. And this karma and phalam karma caused by kama, krodha, raga, dvesha. And then the phalam, which is the result of these karmas, causes another janma or another body. So intellectual samsara leads to emotional samsara. Emotional samsara leads to physical samsara in the form of acquiring another body. So, and in the next body also the ignorance continues, the mistake continues, the desire will come, karma will come, punya papam will come. It goes on and on and on, this cycle. This intellectual samsara becomes emotional samsara, which will ultimately be a physical samsara called the cycle of birth and death. Right? So all of this is samsara only. So how does it persist? Then the fourth question is, Katham vimoksha? What is the solution? The solution is, instead of turning towards the world with infinite desires, one has to diagnose the problem first, right? And change the extroverted mind to self-inquiry, make it introverted. So the materialistic life is an extroverted life, and spiritual life starts when I prepare myself for self-inquiry. And the preparatory steps are in the form of karma yoga and jnana yoga, right? So practicing karma yoga includes upasana yoga, bhakti, etc. And all these disciplines will prepare the mind. And it will prepare the mind means it will give us the fourfold qualification, sadhana chatushtaya sampatti. And none of them will give us directly this knowledge. With all this, we just prepare the ground so that, we can go to a guru and go through a proper spiritual study program. So values we need, karma yoga, upasana yoga. Then we come to jnana yoga, which is self-inquiry under a guru. And through a guru and jnana yoga, one gets self-knowledge and frees himself from this ignorance or misconception. Right? So the whole series resulting from that kama, krodha, karma, phalam, janma, everything will get knocked out. So katham vimoksha through karma and jnana yoga, sequentially practicing. Initially, you will have a karma yoga pradhana life. Then you will have a jnana yoga pradhana life. So then karma yoga will play a supportive role. So this is answer to fourth question. Then the fifth question is ko sau anatma. So this is kaha asau anatma, ko sau anatma. So what is anatma? We mistake our body as self, right? What is not, but that is a mistake, right? So whatever is not self, which we mistake as the self, all of them come under anatma. So we normally don't mistake jadam things like wall or room or table or chair as ourselves. But what happens is when it comes to the body, right? It's like kind of a borderline, right? So these are all external and then the body comes, right? So that is also anatma, and Acharya talks about the threefold bodies, the gross body, the subtle body, and the causal body. The gross body has the shortest duration of life, which is about 100 years. Then you have the subtle body, which has a longer life. From Srishti to Srishti, it survives. Then you have the Karana Shariram, which is, of course, existing forever, which alone stores all the Punyam and Papam. So the storehouse of Punyam Papam is Karana Shariram, which is the subtlest of all the bodies, which has got the longest life. Because even after the end of the universe, I might lose my physical body, I might lose my Sukshma Shariram, but I retain my Karana Shariram because I have unexhausted Punyam and Papam. Right? So all the way, even in Pralayam, it is only in unmanifest form as Karana Sharira. Right? And we have mistaken all of this as Atma, but actually all these are Anatma. And the most powerful Anatma being the Karana Sharira. So this is the fifth question answered. Then the sixth question is Paramaha Kaha Atma. So if the body, mind, etc. are the mistaken self, and if they are really not the self, right? What is the real self, the real I? And the best method to identify the real I is what is it that is continuing changelessly, right? Through all of this, the body changes, the mind changes, the sense organ changes, the brain changes, our punya papam changes, everything in the individual is changing. But the word I, aham, that is constant. That is the non-variable I, right? So the word continues, and therefore this word is non-changing or changeless, and it must be referring to something. So how do we look for that, right? There is only one thing which is changeless across Sthula Shariram, Sukshma Shariram, Karana Shariram, or an easier way of relating to it is looking at the Avastatraya Sakshi. The only thing that is common in, say, your waking state, Jagrata Avastha, dream state, Swapna Avastha, and your deep sleep state is consciousness, right? As Swamiji puts it, that unarvu, the awareness, that consciousness is the constant one amidst all of these, right? And that is Atma. And then, of course, we saw the 5 features of Atma, right? So, therefore, we need to understand that this common factor, consciousness, which is actually the illuminator of the sleep condition also, right? So even though in sleep I do not register the mind, I register somewhere, right? That is why when I wake up, I'm able to say that I slept, right? So the mind comes and goes. The awareness is there constantly. Because I slept, I dreamt, I'm awake. We are able to say that. And consciousness is common across all these three states. And of course, the five-featured consciousness, we should remember as Atma, consciousness, is not a part, product, or property of the Sharirams. So consciousness is an independent principle which pervades and makes these bodies alive. It is not limited by the boundaries of the body. It survives even when the body dies. And this pure consciousness by itself is not available for any form of transaction. Why? Because the medium of transaction is not available. Right? So in Karana Shariram also, this pure consciousness is there, but is not actually actively transacting. Right? So you can get a feel for what that concept is. Right? So it takes a while for us to relate to it, but this is the best way of understanding consciousness is through Avasthatraya Sakshi. At least that's what has helped me relate to it much better. So self-awareness is the functional consciousness, right? And for which the body, mind, sense complex is required. So if you need self-awareness, you want to discern self-awareness, you can't do it without the body, right? So only when the body, mind, sense complex is there, you will be able to discern this awareness, right? Non-functional consciousness means even self-awareness is not there. So Paramaha Atma is the real self, which is the consciousness, which is the five-featured consciousness, which we just saw the features. So with this, the sixth question is answered. Tayoho vivekaha katam. The seventh and final question is Tayor vivekaha katam etad uchyatam. How to differentiate Atma and Anatma because they are so intimately together. I am not able to separate it. Is the student's problem, right? So, and it is not a science lab where the guru can actually demonstrate and do a separation, right? This is intellectual separation and it has to be understood gradually only through these standard prakriyas like the Panchakosha Viveka in Taittiriya Upanishad or in Mandukya Upanishad, you have the Avasthatraya Viveka. So any of these prakriyas or all of these prakriyas help us gradually discern this extremely subtle Atma, right? So Veda says in Taittiriya Upanishad, Annamaya, then you say Annyontara Atma Pranamaya, then slowly Manomaya. It takes you gradually. And then it says it's not even Anandamaya, but it is Ananda Atma, which is of the nature of Sat, Chit and Ananda. Right? So Taittiriya Upanishad goes through this elaborately. So Shankaracharya gives many reasons in several Prakarana Grantha and slowly it makes us, understand that in Drigdrishya Viveka also, one of very famous Prakarana Granthas, Acharya talks about this, right? So you apply all this to Panchakoshas, then slowly you can go down to the Ananda Atma. So whereas in deep sleep state, if you see again, I experience the Karana Sharira and I register that experience in the Karana Sharira. So that Ananda that I experience in the Karana Sharira, it is registered. Though I don't feel that when I am going through that, when I am in deep sleep, I don't feel that. Only after I get up, I am able to recall this, right? So I am Panchakosha Vilakshana, Shariratraya Vilakshana, Avasthatraya Sakshi, Atma, right? So this is the method that we use to differentiate, right? So I use the body, mind, sense complex, but I am not them. This is a very huge shift. It takes years, sometimes multiple janmas also. So with this, the answer to the 7 questions is over, 25 to 60. Then came the extended inquiry from verses 61 to 82, the most important inquiry, which is Jiva Ishvara Aikyam, right? So Ishvara means a creator God. The created individual and the created God are one and the same according to Veda, and Veda reveals this in all the Upanishads by using an appropriate sentence, and the revealing sentence is called Mahavakya. And the most powerful Mahavakya is Tattvamasi, And that inquiry is from 61 to 82, Jiva Ishvara Aikya Vicharaha, Mahavakya Vicharaha. And this is the central theme of the teaching. And how do we know that it is the central teaching, central theme, right? Veda contains so many topics. And how to identify with the central theme? Vivekachudamani doesn't discuss this, but there is a Mimamsa method which talks about the science of Vedic interpretation. There is a method to identify the central portion called Tatparyam. So for that, there is something called clues or markers, Shadlingani. Okay. In fact, a good speaker also can follow these rules, and these 6 indicators are very, very useful. Upakrama and Upasamhara, the beginning and the end, what is being stressed. This is one clue. Abhyasa or repetition, an aspect of the scripture which is repeated again and again. Apurvata or uniqueness. What is something unique that is being revealed, which is not revealed through any other, like in this case, Pratyaksha Pramana, what we can see and experience. Why should Vedanta reveal that, right? So what is the unique thing that is getting revealed? Apurvata. Phalam, the benefits of the study of the scriptures, the prayojanam. Then Arthavada, it does some stuti also. It glorifies and it criticizes also. So from that you can understand what is the spiritual teaching actually, or the scriptural teaching. Then Upapatti, the knowledge which is supported by logic. It is not blind logic, but it is basically logic to be used. For instance, the scriptures may say heaven is eternal. Whatever is acquired in time is lost, we know. So we have to correctly interpret it. But with these Shadlingams, you will be able to understand what is the Tatparyam. And our Acharyas have arrived at Mahavakya, the Aikyam, Jiva Ishvara Aikyam, as the Tatparyam of all these Upanishads and Shastras. Right? So in Brahma Sutra Bhashyam, in Brahma Sutra, there is a particular sutra called Tattu Samanvayat, the 4th sutra. Very elaborately, this has been discussed with these 6 clues, right? The central theme is Jiva Ishvara Aikyam there. And then, of course, he conducts an extended inquiry here in Vivekachudamani. And the gist of this inquiry is a lot of shlokas here, which we saw also. But the created individual and the created Ishvara can never be equal on superficial observation. This is acceptable to everybody. All the acharyas accept, because the created individual has got many limitations, and the creator God has Ananta Kalyana Guna, has lot of auspicious virtues, right? So superficially seeing, yes, Vedanta admits that there is a huge difference between the two. But Vedanta says Tatu Tvam Asi. Right? So you go to the contextual meaning, the spiritual meaning. While understanding the Mahavakya, you understand the intentions, right? It wants to convey something. And then we discover that the inferior qualities of the individual and the superior qualities or virtues of God are not intrinsic, right? They are not really intrinsic. The intrinsic nature of Jiva and God is only one principle. That is, whatever is the principle behind the changing jiva, the changeless consciousness, it is the same principle which is behind the Srishti Karta, Sthiti Karta, Laya Karta, God, right? So, therefore, we understand this through the teachings. Although Bhagavan does lots of great things like Srishti, Sthiti, Laya, etc. But like the jiva, consciousness principle is the one behind the jiva as well as the Ishvara. So the real God is consciousness, the real Jiva is consciousness behind the mediums of transaction, right? So God also does all these transactions, and for that he needs an appropriate medium, and that is Maya. So Maya makes Bhagavan Karta Bhukta. The real Bhagavan, the consciousness, the all-pervading consciousness is Akarta Abhukta. So then he spoke about, Acharya gave a lot of upama, similes, to talk about what are the infinite differences between Jiva and Maya, and what are the kind of examples. He gave a lot of examples, and 4 of them he gave in this verse 75. Kadyota bhanvoriva rajavrityayoho upamburashyo paramanu meruho. Upamburashyo paramanu meruho. Basically, all these are what? It is like an atom and a Meru mountain. The king and the praja and a small well and a huge reservoir of water, right? So if you just see superficially, you will only see the differences like this, which are huge between Jiva and Ishvara, right? So Vedanta wants to convey a very important information. Differences all of us know. Vedanta wants to highlight the non-difference from the standpoint of consciousness, because the consciousness which is beyond time and space is indivisible, and there is no small or big consciousness. So it is the same one all-pervading consciousness which gets the name Jiva when it is pervading the body, and is called Ishvara when it is pervading Maya. So if you remove the Shariram and the Maya, mentally discern them, then it is just the same consciousness which is behind both. So from essential nature, both are same, and two words were used, Upadhi and Upahitam. Upadhi drishtya vedaha, Upahita drishtya abhedaha. So I don't want to get into the details of Upadhi further. For those of them who wrote to me, I have anyway clarified for them. So there is Veda and there is Abheda also between Jiva and Ishvara. Some philosophers, some darshanikas actually call this the Bheda Bhedavada. That is, they say that you should accept differences and non-differences. But Advaitins are very clear. If you accept the differences as mithya and the similarity as real, right, then they are okay to accept Bheda Bhedavada. Otherwise, they are very clear that it is only one Satyam Brahman which is behind Jiva as well as Ishvara. The Upadhi and the differences are only there for transaction. In and through all the transactions, Pashyan, Shinvan, Sprishan, Jigran, right? The Jnani does not forget that he is Akarta, Abhokta, Nitya Mukta, Brahma Asmi, right? So the superimpositions are removed, and then this is the knowledge which gives liberation, because the knowledge negates all forms of bondage. It helps us claim that liberation is our eternal nature. So this is the most important part from 61 to 82, which is the very significant extended inquiry part. Then the part 4, Jnana Phalam, from 83 to 101. And that what is the benefit of the knowledge? So we saw this elaborately. Jivan Mukti is the first benefit, right? So it means living while liberated. And the characteristics of a Jivan Mukta we saw elaborately, who is well established in the teaching. He has gained the knowledge through Shravanam and Mananam. Consistent and systematic study gives me the knowledge, and Mananam is for removing all the doubts. And then, of course, for removal of habitual misconceptions and habits, we go to Nididhyasanam to assimilate the knowledge well. So then the person is called a Jnana Nishta or a Sthira Prajna. He is free from the primary bondage called intellectual samsara. Self-ignorance and self-misconception, which is resulted in ahankara, is no longer there. Now that has gone, the mamakara is not there. All the consequences, right? So nirmaha, nirahankaraha, Krishna repeatedly says in the Gita. So the ahankara and mamakara go away. This freedom from intellectual samsara is what is referred as Jivan Mukti. So naturally, Raga Dvesha, which are centered around Aham, Mama, all those also go away. And these are what we refer to as emotional samsara. So that is gone away. And so because Ahankara, Mamakara, Raga Dvesha, the Dushta Chatushtayam is removed. And even in the worst provoking situations, the Jnani never gets challenged. So that is the conviction in the teaching. And as I said, FIR reduction takes place, frequency of emotional disturbances, intensity, and the recovery period, right? All comes down. And most of the time, a Jnani is balanced and he enjoys samatvam, right? And then the body will continue until the prarabdha karma is there. And when the prarabdha karma is exhausted, the jnani dies, right? And jnani dies meaning physically, from the standpoint of the body, he dies, he becomes videha. So now previously he was a sadeha jnani, now he is videha jnani at the time of death. So normally when other people die, they become videha, right? But they will take another body afterwards. In the case of a jnani, he does not take another body. This is called videhasya jnanina mukti. He doesn't have a deha after that. He gets videha mukti because prarabdha is exhausted and all the stored karmani, right? The sanchita karmani. This is an apaurushaya vishayam. Only Shastra Pramanam we have to rely on. Shastra says that all the sanchita papam is destroyed. Sanchita papa punyam is destroyed, right? So it is burned. Agami is avoided because he doesn't have kartrutvam and bhoktrutvam. So at the time of death, his karma balance is zero, and therefore he doesn't have any body at all. The consciousness, right? It merges or seemingly merges into the Sukshma Prapancha. Sukshma Shariram merges into Sukshma Prapancha. Stula Shariram, of course, is, going back to the Stula Prapancha. And the Karana Shariram also merges into Samashti Karana Prapancha, which is Maya or Antaryami. Right? So, Vishwa merges into Virat, Taijasa into Hiranyagarbha, and Prajna into Antaryami. Right? And then we also discussed a small point thereafter, which was on how does the Jnani view himself as well, whether he has prarabdham, etc. And I said, for the Jnani, he is not looking at anything as Satyam. Even prarabdham is Nitya for him. So for him, he is liberated. There is nothing called Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti and all. There's no difference there. He is ever liberated. That's all, right? There's no difference. So that is the difference that Shankaracharya highlighted between a common person and a jnani, how he views Jivan Mukti and Videha Mukti, right? So it was very clearly communicated. So the Jivan Mukti, Videha Mukti, etc. is from Ajnani's standpoint. For a jnani, it is always Nitya Mukti. So Shankaracharya gives all these explanations, and this is the Jnana Phalam from 83 to 101. And then, of course, the Upasamhara was from 102 to 108. We find the Shishya telling the Guru, right? It's all in the form of a dialogue. He comes and tells the Guru that he's so happy that he's got this knowledge, and he says he's Danyaha, Danyoham, etc. And Guru is also very happy. And thus the dialogue is closing with that. And then Acharya concludes saying that this Vivekachudamani is like water for a thirsty person in the desert, right? So it is the liberating wisdom for the seekers of moksha. So with this, the fifth and final topic of Upasamhara is also over. I would like to conclude with the Guru Namaskara verse. Prayers to my Guru, Swami Paramarthananda. Swarajya Samrajya Vibhutiresha Bhavat Kripa Shri Mahita Prasadat Prapta Maya Shri Gurave Mahatmane Namo Namaste Tu Punar Namostu Namo Namaste Tu Punar Namostu Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti